kindness is a worldview versus gesture. And if
Mm,
we can all better understand that it's a value and a way of being, that it would be much easier to consistently act as if we are being kind.
Kindness.
Why kindness?
Because it makes a difference.
For connection.
Kindness can change lives.
It's contagious.
The science says you'll be glad you did.
Kindness is the key to a healthier, happier world.
Why kindness? While no one answer is the same, one thing is clear. Kindness is something we all know, but do we know why it matters? I'm your host, Jaclyn Lindsey, co-founder CEO of kindness.org, and you're listening to Why Kindness. Hello, kind makers. Today's guest is my friend Julie Vincent, founder of The Gifted Life, a movement redefining what it means to be gifted. Drawing from her lived experience as a mother of 2 children with vastly different yet equally profound expressions of giftedness, shaped in part by a rare genetic disease, Julie brings compassion, clarity, and grounded insight to conversations too often misunderstood or reduced to labels. A coach, speaker, advocate, and host of the Gift in It podcast, Julie champions a lens of meaning over measurement. You can learn more about her at thegiftedlife.co and on Instagram at I am Julie Vincent. And you can find us there too at kindness.org. Julie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being with us today. We open every episode with the same question, why kindness? What would you say to that?
I was thinking about this question and I thought to myself, why not? It feels so foundational for my personal values, and kindness just makes life more meaningful and less judgmental. But I think also, just given what's happening in the world right now, I think we all just need more of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's hard for kindness and judgment to live in the same space, to really coexist, that they crowd each other out. So the more kindness, the less judgment, which is what I'm all about with what I'm working on. And then I think that kindness is also the opposite of measuring. So it doesn't rank and it doesn't evaluate people. It just meets them where they are. And that's really where my mission lies.
I love that. But truly, every time someone answers, I'm like, oh, we've never heard that. And there were so many good nuggets in there. I
Thanks.
love thinking about, it meeting people where they are, because I think it's this one singular value. Maybe another would be love, like the feeling of love, but where it's so universal, we all know it and have it and feel it, but it meets us where we are. And I think that's really powerful. So thank you for that. So we've recently decided to shake things up with how we do these shows, and we're opening with like a flash round of questions. So I'm just going to throw questions to you and you just kind of off the cuff answer. And the first one is, how would you define kindness in one word?
Love.
Love it. What act would you have the whole world do if you could get everyone to do one kind act?
Say hi.
What book are you reading or listening to, if you're listening to a book right now?
I just finished Strangers, which is not really about kindness.
That's okay. What is it about? I haven't heard of it.
It's the true story of a woman who ends up being surprised by a divorce and how she really figures out what happens in her life and moves on from it.
I mean, there could be kindness, like self-kindness. Does she heal?
Sure. She does heal. Yes.
Okay.
It's my book club book.
What song is kindness to you?
Ooh. That one I would say, I don't know that if I could think of an actual song, but I constantly put music on to feel like peace and love. So I think if I define kindness as love, sometimes that's, let me think about that answer. I could maybe give you another one.
Okay. What is the message you would want people listening to hear from you?
I think kindness is a worldview versus a gesture. And if we can all better understand that it's a value and a way of being, that it would be much easier to consistently act as if we are being kind.
Love that. That was amazing. Goosebumps. Thank you. That was wonderful. Okay. So tell us a little bit. Well, where are you calling in from? Where are you today?
I'm in Westport, Connecticut.
Okay. And that's home full time?
Full-time home. Yep.
Okay. Always has been?
I've lived in Connecticut for many years, but made some different turns to college when I went out to Virginia, and then I decided to move to California for a long time. I moved to San Diego after college with some friends and sort of started my career up there. Lived there for 8 years, and then after meeting my husband in California, we decided to move to New York City, and we did that for about 6 years, and then we made our way back to Connecticut. So
Hey.
I've
Is
been
he
all over the place.
is he from San Diego?
He's not. He's originally from Illinois and went to
Okay.
school in Arizona and then ended out in San Diego for a job.
Okay. Oh, so you
That's
both
where
have
we met.
like a wide range of places. I think it's
Exactly.
hard, like, to me, San Diego's like epitome of perfect weather. So to anyone you take and like put them in winter, I always wonder what it's like, but
It truly is, and I always say, like, at some point, I think I'll probably end up back there because the sunshine just makes me a happier and probably kinder person, but I think there's something to be said for the East Coast, especially during the summer.
huh.
I definitely was born and raised here, and so it feels right to be living here now, but it doesn't mean that at some point later, I won't make my way back to Southern California.
Yeah. When I was thinking about leaving New York many years ago, San Diego was like top of our list. And we went out there and stayed with friends for a week and explored. And we're like, we really could see ourselves out here, but it was lacking our family. All of our family
Mm,
is East Coast based. And so,
same.
yeah, we ended up in St. Petersburg, Florida, which I tell everyone is the San Diego of the East Coast. So,
I think it might be. When we originally spoke, I told you that I had been there recently for a soccer tournament, and I was like, "There's something about this place.
yeah.
It's really lovely."
It's very special. So I ended up in my version of San Diego.
Love it.
So what was career for you? You said you were out there for 8 years launching your career. What was that?
So I graduated college with a communication studies public relations degree. I think at the time I thought definitely public relations and marketing, that's all I want to do. I didn't really think outside of the box of what I had studied in college. And so I started out that way and I worked through PR at an agency and then kind of broadened into integrated marketing and even some business development over time, but sort of stayed on the marketing role. And after 12 years, felt burnt out
Mm.
and really wasn't seeing the true happiness that I thought I would feel after achieving, different things in my career. And took a little bit of a turn when I ended up going back to, actually, not back to, I ended up going to yoga teacher training to sort of like help me release some of the stress from the burnout and the career. And when I went to yoga teacher training, ended up opening my mind so significantly to all different types of careers, ways of living, especially in the wellness world.
Huh.
And that's where I decided to expand what I was doing and take some of my previous experience and bring it into the wellness world and found a job in corporate wellness and built a wellness program for that business from the ground up. That's really where my coaching and teaching experience started.
Amazing. So when like I think about PR, I think so many people it feels like cutthroat, maybe like it almost could be an unkind or even possibly
Sure.
toxic culture, all depending. Were there times where you saw and felt hopeful about that world? Like was there goodness, kindness? Do you have any like examples or ways that it was showing up at that time for you?
I think that because I was in corporate PR, our clients were like organizations or companies that were really like doing standard types of things like press releases to like build promotion and get
Mhm.
more um, well known about something they were doing. So I didn't really experience a lot of negativity. I know that there are other pieces of PR, like, you know, critical communications where something goes bad and it feels like it's really stressful and there's a lot of like negativity involved. But I didn't really see that side of it because I wasn't in it for that long before I expanded into kind of a broader integrated marketing role.
Okay.
I think it was fun and felt lighthearted to help people promote what they were doing and then see the kind of return that they got from that whether they were, on TV or in the press. They got opportunities from the work that we did. I always thought that that was really cool and interesting.
Yeah. And I want to be honest with our listeners and say that I had the incredible honor of meeting you a few weeks ago virtually and hearing it was our first time meeting, but hearing a little bit of your stories. So I definitely know more coming in than I often do with many of our guests. And so I'm really
Mhm.
eager and excited to get into why I thought you'd make such a wonderful contribution on what we try to do here. Before we get to all of that, what was your experience with kindness growing up? Like, how were you seeing it? What was were taught in your home? Like, what was it for you growing up?
Yeah, I think my first memory of kindness was when I was probably around 2 years old. I was born with something called hip dysplasia, so I had to get a couple of surgeries done, when I was born and around 2, and that's hard, for parents and obviously the child that's going through it, and I remember there was a time, the second surgery, where friends and family brought me all these gifts. And at the time, I might have thought, oh, wow, I got this amazing Care Bear, Cheer Bear that I've always wanted. But it wasn't necessarily about the thing, right? It was really just the fact that they showed up. They were giving love, they were giving support. They wanted to make a little girl and her parents feel better in the midst of a surgery that was hard at that age. So, really felt like that was a time where I started to find like just doing things for people and holding space for whatever they're going through, right? And then throughout the years, I always, my parents were both very kind people. I think that was something that, we obviously learned to say please and thank you, but it went beyond that. It was like, doing kind gestures, writing thank you notes, and just smiling and saying hi and being nice, right? We certainly grew up with that.
Yeah, yeah. My mom was a big handwritten thank you note person.
Mhm.
So, and now it's passed on to my kids, and they're like, "Oh, another one." And I was like, "Yes." So I love
I
that.
still yeah, I still think, the written note is really powerful.
It's the way to go. Did you have any unkindness? Any memories where you saw or experienced lack of kindness in some way?
Yeah, I'm sure, I think all of us probably can come up with a memory of being bullied or feel, where we felt like really self-conscious of
Mhm.
what was happening, through the years. I certainly felt like there was some people, or groups that, were not accepting of me or, you know, made me feel bad for how I, acted or looked or whatever. That just happens, I think, as we grow up, especially, nothing that like I didn't really feel like I was surrounded by people who were unkind on the regular. I thought that I made really great choices with the people that were in my circle of friends.
Yeah.
And over the years have learned so much about that. Really finding people that respect you and treat you well
Mhm.
and making that the people that you surround yourself with
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like
when you have
when
the choice.
yeah, exactly, when you're younger
Right.
and I think sometimes now as a mom, it's like, how do we empower kids to recognize that and, like, to know? Because I think sometimes the bullying side, for example, can be a place where you're able to be, welcomed in if you're cruel. Like, there's, like, a
Mhm.
sense of, if they're gonna like me for being mean, and that's a place where I can be safe, and there's some really, interesting psychology that's been coming out around that, where it's like a place to be accepted. But how do we
Mm,
show kids there's lots of ways that acceptance can look, and also what's the bully going through? Like, how do we
sure.
give them that so they're not then giving in to the other side. And it's a choice, but it's hard when they're young,
Oh,
so
absolutely. I definitely have had experiences with my own kids who are
yeah.
8 and 10 now recently, where something happened, and I'll always say, "I'm so sorry that happened. You have a right to feel the way you feel.
Mhm.
And also, please remember that that had nothing to do with you.
Mm, I love that. Yeah.
It has to do with them."
Yeah, exactly. How beautiful a world it would be if adults could do that.
Ugh.
You know? Okay, so bringing us back more present day. So you got into wellness,
Mhm,
and I love this so much because, of course, for us, we think kindness is wellness, and it's such a big part of well-being.
mhm.
But tell us a little bit about, like, that part of your life.
Yeah. So, like I said, transitioned to a corporate wellness role, sort of leveraging my marketing communications experience and adding in this expertise that I had developed through yoga teacher training, and just being super interested in it myself. And so after that, I had my son in the middle of it, and we ended up moving to Connecticut. And it just didn't make sense to do the corporate role for me anymore. And I wasn't necessarily finding all of what I wanted. So I decided to take a little time, be with my son, and then go back to school. And I went while he was sleeping every day during his naps. I would go online and work on my Institute of Integrative Nutrition wellness certification. And in that, you learned so much about well being, nutrition specifically, movement, stress reduction, all of that. But there was also this other piece that was so much about like coaching and listening and asking the right questions and holding space for people. And that's where I think I really decided that I wanted to create my own coaching business to work with people one on one and small groups and really get in it with people, which didn't have as much opportunity to do when I was working for a business. So I started my coaching business then. I've done that now for over 10 years. It's evolved
Wow.
significantly from what I originally came out doing. And I added in through my own like personal life experience, all of this mindset work that I had developed and realized was sort of like the special key to why I was a good coach for certain people. And so over time, it was wellness plus mindset. And then life happened. And when my daughter was born, she was born surprisingly with a meconium aspiration. So she got whisked away to the NICU right away, and it was a complete surprise, and we didn't know what was happening. And about 36 hours later, after they had gotten all of that out of her system, they had done some tests to see whether everything was okay and we could take her home, and they realized that there were some key things that were not up to par, and they mentioned to us, "I think we actually need to do some further testing." We did an MRI of her brain, an MRI of her spine, and they mentioned also genetic testing because they had a hunch that maybe something was actually happening or there might be something underlying some of the symptoms that they were seeing. So we stayed in the NICU and we ended up going through all of that. And 10 days later, we left after she finally passed the car seat test. And we brought her home with no answers. And we really didn't know what was happening. And so that really started a 2-year period of time where we had to figure it out. We went through a lot of different doctor's appointments, immediate support via therapists across the board of what was happening. And, there was a lot of intervention, but still a lot of questions. And so, in the midst of raising a 2-year-old and having a small business, we tried to figure it out. After 2 years, we went to a new geneticist where she was really amazing, and she gave us a different perspective on doing some whole exome genetic testing, and we decided to move forward. So we took the blood, we slept and thinking, it would be probably 4 months or so to hear back, but it ended up being that they had a hunch that it was something specific and they ran just one single test. And they called us a few days later and said, "Bring in your daughter. We've got some news for you." And so we drove to that appointment and we learned that day that my daughter had a rare genetic disorder called myotonic dystrophy, which is a form of muscular dystrophy. And in that moment, while I was hugging her and completely in shock, the geneticist said, "And one of you has it too, because it's a genetic disorder." So I had an intuition really strongly in that moment that it was me, and took blood and found out a week later that I too had a form of myotonic dystrophy. So that huge life happening really completely changed my definition of wellness and, really defined a new period of life for us. And
Mhm.
so, after several years of healing and really going through all of this with my daughter and getting to her to a really great place, by the way, now she's doing awesome. My business expanded into really starting to work with some people that had similar kind of things going on, and not necessarily, a genetic disorder, but just challenges, adversity, maybe some diagnosis, just things that, really they needed support with. And I think I was able to hold the space for them and help them with their wellness and help them with their mindset, but also with this like different lens, because I had gone through it myself. And so just recently, I decided to start something called the Gifted Life, which is a movement redefining what giftedness means. Because I do have another child, and through parenting for over 10 years, um, you know, I I realized that they're both really, really different kids, and they both have their own gifts. And this is not just my own family, really. It's all of us, right? We all have our own gifts. And so I think it's super important for us not only to acknowledge them, but to accept them. And I'm trying to help people do that in a way where they're accepting themselves more, they're more accepting to others. And, we can live a more peaceful existence, feeling like we have things that are special that we can give to the world.
Mhm. Thank you, Julie. Thank you for sharing all of that. So going back to when she was born, tell us a little bit about and then through 2 years, how the symptoms were presenting themselves, if any, or was it hidden symptoms? How did they know something was going on?
So there's scores. I think it's called Agbar scores when you're born, and they rate, whether you have jaundice. They rate your
Mhm.
tone, and specifically, her tone was really low. It was called hypotonia. And so they used terms like floppy baby, things that were really disturbing to hear, but, I think were representative of like how she appeared at that time.
Mhm.
And so those were the things that they were most concerned about. She also had her feet turned in. They weren't club feet, but they were turned in a little bit. I think that was mostly it. So they were just seeing some things that were sort of a little bit out of the norm and flagged them. There was one specific NICU nurse that said, "I think something else is happening here." And I remember feeling so upset at the time, but then grateful
Hmm.
afterwards.
Yeah. When she started getting older after turning 2, was life how would you describe life for her? Was it normal, or was there ongoing testing? How do
Mhm.
you deal with a rare genetic diagnosis?
So she had, missed milestones. For example, my son basically ran at 9 months old, and my daughter walked at 20 months old, right? She crawled on her first birthday. So it was just like global delays, delays with speech. And still to this day, she has delays. So we're, constantly working on meeting her where she is. And at this age, at age 8, there's amazing things that you can use to assist children like this. Like, for example, technology in the classroom. Sometimes she uses text to speech versus writing because it takes her brain a lot longer to tell her hand what to write. So, over time, we've really have done tons of research, obviously, and met with so many different types of people that are trying to help. And we've been able to support her so that she can thrive.
Mm, yeah. And on this journey, I know you also had shared there was a desire to try to give her some sense of normalcy, like send her to school or have her be in
Hmm.
environments where she's learning. So,
Yeah.
what was that experience like, especially for anyone who's listening that's a caregiver, has children in their lives where they're facing maybe not this exact thing, but this idea of they're battling something. How do I still show them this is what being a 5-year-old is, or a 7-year-old, or an 8-year-old? So, yeah,
Yeah.
what was that like, and what would you say to them?
So I think it was really challenging to find the right place for her to go to school in the preschool years.
Mm,
We originally had sent her to the same preschool that my son went to, which was out of a YMCA. And so it was all activity based and really active. And at that time, when she was 2 years old, she was only going a couple hours a week. We just found that it really wasn't the right place for her. And I wouldn't say that we came across unkind people, but we certainly came across people who didn't understand. And I guess would say maybe weren't kind enough to ask how to
hmm,
better meet
mhm,
us where we were. And then we finally switched her to a different preschool in our town and ended up finding the kindest teachers
mhm,
who were so supportive and really encouraging and, made it possible for her to feel part of the mix and not different. Not obviously every kid is different, but not different in a way that is so obvious or
mhm,
negative, right? From there, we went into the public school system and, she's had an amazing experience through the public schools in a regular classroom and is just supported with the right types of either people in the classroom or pull out situations where she'll go to do a little bit of speech therapy or something like that during the week. So these public schools are really, really supportive through the IEP programs for kids like her. And honestly, not even just her for that matter, but just really any child that needs that type of support, whether they have ADHD or autism or something else. They're really what I've seen is a lot of incredibly supportive teachers, a lot of incredibly supportive administrators that care so much about your specific child and their story. And they're doing everything they can to meet them where they are and help them feel included and supported and, so they can thrive.
yeah. And I think with the gifted life, this idea of almost reframing, redefining how we
Hmm.
interpret gifted, because I know, like, for me growing up, it was like this kind of signal. I think it was like in kindergarten when I got tested, but my parents decided not to do anything with it because they were uncomfortable that it would somehow be seen as like you're more special, or you're set apart. It
Hmm.
was like a yeah, so that I ended up not doing it and anything with it until later. But I just remember it had a stigma with it, good, bad. However, like some kids were like, oh, like gifted, and then other parents are like, my kid has to be gifted, and so it's just I
Yeah.
think a lot. It's loaded, right? And so this idea that you're like just going head on into it and being like, no, it's the gifted life, and we're gonna talk about it. I just want to hear the thoughts behind it, why that, what your experience was with both your daughter and son in that. Anything you want to share around that?
Yeah, I think, like I said before, as a mother for over 10 years, I think also having been a speaker and a coach and an advocate and having clients for so long, I've really spent this last decade walking alongside people whose lives didn't unfold the way they expected, including myself. It really has been just the slow work of choosing meaning over measurement when life didn't follow our plans or expectations. And having a child who is defined as traditionally gifted and has been in those programs, and then having a daughter who has an IEP in school, being in conferences and hearing the words gifted and talented, right, for one kid, and then another, the words like extra help and all that, right? It just makes you step back and think like, but why isn't my daughter is gifted? Why is that term only being used, right, for intelligence, for
Huh.
something that's measured by a test, right? It just doesn't seem right. And even as I advocate for my son and like what's right for him, a lot of these programs have changed the name and they're no longer gifted and talented, which I think is an amazing next step, right? To just not necessarily call them by those words, although I think it still is used pretty frequently among parents or even people in the schools, even if it's called something else. But just to get everyone to better understand why every person has their unique gifts and to help those things come to light, whether it be through education, other programming, or, just being kind and asking them what their gift is.
Yeah. So what is the gifted life about? Tell us like what's in front of you, where are you at with it? What do the next 5 years hold for this idea?
So it's a movement that I'm trying to start, people to really, via education and telling stories of what everybody's gifts are, really to kind of open minds and get people to understand why this is important. I have recently started a podcast called The Gift in It, which is about what giftedness really looks like. And not as performance or a diagnosis, but really as something that reveals itself through the lives that we're actually living. And every conversation's an invitation to hear how someone else is, finding meaning in an unexpected place. So I'm having people on that are, everywhere on the spectrum of giftedness and telling us their stories, whether it be through adversity or challenge. Maybe it's a nonlinear path, or having a child that has this type of thing, all different types of people who are coming on to really share their stories so that we can start to open people's minds and get them to shift the way they think about what a gifted life is and what giftedness really means. And then
Yeah.
down the pike, I'll be working on a membership program where people can, get access to coaching and resources and workshops. And we'll be doing events and things like that to really bring community together around this idea.
Yeah. Do you hope that gifted is redefined publicly? Like, is that kind of a
That
long-term?
is my biggest hope for the gifted life is that it's redefined publicly.
What are some of the words they're using instead? You said like your son's school has changed the name. What is
So our
starting?
school's program is called Workshop.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah,
I like that.
it's
So
interesting.
you're in workshop.
One of the guests that I had on the podcast recently just told me that when she was young, that the gifted and talented program was called Spectrum,
Oh.
which I think is so interesting, right? If you
Yeah,
think about what that term
what that means
means
now, yeah, how
this
you
day,
think, yeah,
right? But like as I've talked to people, I'm realizing like, so many of the people that were in the gifted and talented programs, at least back in the day, have ADHD diagnosis
right.
or are on the autism spectrum. So it's really interesting. Like I'm getting so much information on like
Yeah,
where the giftedness comes from.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
ironic that, we may have thought that that was just like strictly intelligence
right,
and good genes, right? But really it is the things that we're talking about, which,
yeah,
you might learn later on in life in your 40s that that's what it is.
right,
Because
right,
those conversations really weren't happening as
right.
much in the average family back then.
Yeah, I feel like what's exciting about what you're doing is the time feels like now. You
Mhm.
know, like I just think I don't know if something like this could have existed 20 years ago. You know, like people have to be ready for this kind of conversation and change and willingness to engage in this dialogue.
You
Yeah.
actually bring up such an interesting point. I was talking about this in my first podcast. There were several researchers back in the day who came out with different ideas of like what giftedness meant. And it was attempted to be done back in like the 80s
Oh,
and
wow.
it failed
People were
because the
yeah,
collective
the
and
cultural
society wasn't ready to hear it. So I
wow.
totally agree with you. I think now is the time. The collective is
Yeah.
now ready to hear this type of thing. There's, more and more people are using the word authenticity and talking about uniqueness. And I think if we can just keep, speaking to how that's our superpower, what makes us unique is our
Mhm.
superpower. And if everybody can focus on what makes us unique and do something with that, then the world would definitely be a better and kinder place.
Absolutely. Hear, hear. Um, if you're willing, I think with going through these experiences, it tests us as individuals, as mothers, wives, partners, like all of these other aspects are affected because all of a sudden the most important thing, usually when a child is sick is like their health and well-being, getting them better, doing whatever it takes. We on our side had two different experiences with our sons with rare diagnoses as well. And I just know it was like nothing else mattered. So much
Mhm.
was compromised along the way. I guess because you're a coach and in wellness, like I almost wonder, like, were you a self coach to yourself, and what did you learn for you as Julie in all those other hats that you have when it comes to how you're showing up with this challenge that you're facing as well in parallel?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. I think the number one thing that I learned was how to be present because I could easily skip to, 20 years later thinking about my daughter, and how, getting married and all the things that sort of like happen in your mind when you birth a child, right? What are they going to be doing for their work and who are they going to marry and are they going to have children and all those things, right? I could do that on any given day, but I don't allow myself to because being in the present moment is the most important thing for me and for her.
Mhm,
And that's where we show up the best. So when I jump ahead, even if it's a year from now, I
mhm,
find myself like being a more anxious mother,
mhm,
making decisions differently. And so I've really, done a lot of work extending my yoga teacher into meditation and mindfulness because that is something that has worked so well for me over the years to not catastrophize, to not
yeah,
jump to something that is so far beyond the concept of reality.
mhm.
We can make up all of these stories of what's going to happen, but the truth is that no one knows.
No one knows.
And there's really not a lot of sense
Mm,
in living in the future, especially if there's fear there.
mhm.
So I've been gifted the gift of presence with the diagnosis
Yeah.
because this is really the way that we need to live in order to have the most peace and joy.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. I have this memory coming to me when my son wasn't talking yet. Maybe he was like 18 months or something, but he was like frantically, like all over the house looking. And I had been working on trying to be more present as well. I was and still am working full time, entrepreneur, very long hours. I was always working at night, even if I was home. And I saw present as like I'm here, and, he finally comes out and he's holding my phone. And he hands it to me, and that's what he was looking for. And whether it was real or not, I was certain he, as this little 18-month-old, was like, "Oh, she's missing a part of her body. Like, where's that part of her like, that's always in her hand?" It was such this
Mm,
light bulb moment that, like, all he knows of me is me with a phone in my hand.
yeah.
And when I'm sitting here trying to engage with him, he's like, "Oh, something's missing. Something's not right with what's
Mm,
happening."
interesting.
So it really changed what being present meant to me. It's not just being here, it's being all here, like mind,
Mhm.
body, spirit, with like, you're all that matters. And that's how I started seeing being present, was like, am I all here with you, not distracted and letting myself be in all these other
Sure.
places mentally. So that's what came up for me when you said that. I really love that. But also not thinking about the future. I mean, gosh, if there's anything, it's that we just have no idea what will come every day, you know?
Exactly.
Um, so I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This season of Why Kindness is made possible by the Wasserman Glasser family in loving memory of Sandra K. Wasserman. Sandra believed that kindness could change the world, and she had a remarkable way of making everyone feel seen, valued, and loved. Her signature phrase was simple, yet powerful: "Thank you for your kindness." Her belief in kindness as a force for change is the very heartbeat of this podcast. In her honor, we invite listeners to do the same. Think of someone who has shown you kindness and let them know. A simple thank you can ripple farther than we ever could imagine. From the Wasserman Glasser family, thank you for your kindness. We are honored to carry Sandra's light forward into this season. Thank you. Thank you for your story. Just your beautiful work and heart, and just the way you've shown up is amazing. So I'm so grateful now to know you and for this story to
Aw,
be out in the world. It's very inspiring.
I'm honored.
So I'm really excited about this next part because when I started kindness.org, I'm all heart, like a million pounds of heart. And I'm like, how do you measure kindness? Like this was kind of one of the things keeping me up at night because I didn't know how to show impact. It was like, can you feel impact? Is impact enough to sustain this?
Mhm.
So measurement became almost like a mountain to conquer of like, how do and I saw it almost like measurement was a signal of seriousness that like if we can show the gravitas of this, then maybe it would be deemed worthy to invest in, prioritize, have a seat at the table, put on the agenda, however you want to think about it. But of course, it's the meaning of it. Like measurement
Mhm.
only takes you so far.
Yeah.
But we created our KQ as a really fun way to get people to examine their internal kindness. So it does measure you and it is rigorous. And it's like an idea where you're just like learning about yourself and how you show up in the world. But it's really meant to get you to just start thinking about, yeah, who am I toward all these different people? And how do I
Mhm.
choose kindness? How do I show up? So we ask our guests to take it and share a little bit about their experience. So I know that you did.
I
Uh,
did.
which version did you
I
do?
took the neighbor one.
Neighbor. Okay, so
Yeah.
tell us about it. First, like if you're comfortable sharing your score, but then what did you learn about it? What did you think? Anything about the
So I
experience?
was excited to see my score come across as 86%. I was like, "Yes, I'm
No
kind."
surprise. No
I thought it was such an interesting tool. I really,
surprise.
had to think
Mhm.
what the answer was to some of the questions. I mean, there were some things like, I don't know, I don't remember the exact words, but it's sort of like, would you pick up your neighbor and bring them somewhere? Or would you if they needed something at the grocery store, would you buy it for them? Those were easy answers for me. I think what brought me down was the question of like, if there was someone holding up your neighbor with a gun, would you would you get involved? And I said no because I was so fearful of guns. But that one I was like, I think that's a step too far for me.
Step too far. I draw the line. Yes. I think that's understandable.
I'll pick up your kids.
Yeah.
I'll drop off some eggs, but
Yeah.
I probably won't get involved in a gunfight.
Yeah. I think that's fair. It's the shock value.
Oh, I
Yeah.
loved it. I was such a great question.
Oh, I think it's like it's been funny. See, there's like another version where you're asked about like bailing people out of jail or
Yeah,
like
I saw that one. Yeah.
was that one in there too? Okay,
I
yeah.
think I also said no to that. I think those
Yeah.
were maybe my 2 no's, and everything else I was like strongly agree or,
Yeah.
closely to strongly agree.
Yeah, when it was being designed, it was showing like the greater the act, is it more effective? Like, are those things more important? And
Mm,
obviously, it's complex and it's not one size fits all, but we did find that often the smallest acts are more powerful. Like they can go so much farther. And of course, the likelihood of being faced with those big, wild, heroic acts are so slim that it is
yes,
about the everyday interactions. And
absolutely.
that's what I think we're reminded of. But
I
yeah,
I try to remind myself that it's like I said, it's the saying hello.
yes,
It's,
yes,
letting someone step in front of you in line.
yeah,
It's the little small acts of
yeah,
kindness that really matter the
yeah,
most and can actually matter so much to someone when they're having a bad day, or you never know what people are going through, right? So
Yep.
just always sort of approaching things and with that lens
Yes.
as
Yep.
much as you possibly can. We know we're not perfect people, right?
Yep.
Sometimes we're in a rush, but like when you have the opportunity, when you have the time, when it's not that big of a deal to let the car go in front of you,
Yep.
you know, or not beep back when someone beeps at you,
Yep.
those types of things. They're small little things, but they matter so much.
Yep. Yeah.
And I always say to my kids too, an act of kindness to others is also an act of kindness to yourself.
Yep. 2 for 1.
2 for
I
1.
love that. I love that. Do they get it? Do you think they
Yes,
understand? Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay,
My
amazing.
daughter just did something the other day. She had the opportunity in school to write about someone who had really made a difference to her.
Mm.
We decided, together who that person was. And she wrote a whole thing about why this person was really important to her. And as soon as I read it, I cried. It was just so loving and kind. And I love that the school gave the kids an opportunity to do this type of
Uh-huh.
writing.
Huh?
Well, it could have just sat on my desk, the printout of what she wrote, but I decided to give this to the person. So I
Hmm.
bought a frame, I framed it, and I
Oh
had my daughter give it to her the next time she saw her.
my
And I
goodness.
cannot tell you the simple gesture of giving a piece of writing,
Yeah.
buying a simple frame and giving it to her was, an incredible act. And I felt incredibly loving and, happy that that happened. My daughter was over the moon with her reaction. She told me, like, after years and years of doing the things she does, that she's like never had anybody do this type of thing to her before. And it was this simple act of kindness.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, gosh, we should be doing more of this,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
All I did was share her words.
Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you. Are
Yeah.
you
So hopefully
comfortable
that inspires someone else.
Yeah, I hope so. What role this person plays in your daughter's life, are you comfortable sharing?
Sure, I'm sure she would be honored to be, featured. She is my daughter's horse trainer. So my
Oh,
daughter rides horses, and she is my daughter's horse trainer, and she's always been the most kind, inclusive, supportive person who helps build her confidence, and it is her happy place, and, every week she goes there. Not only does she love her, but, just being in the midst of all of the people in that community are such loving, kind, caring people. And it's just an incredible place to be.
it's amazing.
And yeah, so she wrote to her.
I love that. What's their name in case anyone wants to start training to be with
Her
horses?
name is Michelle.
Michelle.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I love this. We're going to end on action together. So we ask all of our guests to think about who they want to thank for their kindness. The show is made possible by the Wasserman Glasser family in honor of Sandra K. Wasserman. And that was her tagline. Her whole life,
Mm.
80 plus years, she would just go to people and say, thank you for your kindness as a way to remind them they matter, they're seen, and their act of kindness made a difference. And so now we invite people to do that in her honor. So you can call someone, you can text someone, you can let us know who you're going to reach out to if you don't want to do it in real time. But we're going to end on thanking someone for their kindness. So who's it going to be, Julie?
Well, it's funny that we talked about thank you notes earlier because I had just thought about how I've been recording my podcasts and all of these wonderful people are taking time out to come and speak for an hour and share their stories and be vulnerable. And so I bought thank you cards
Oh,
to
beautiful.
mail them a personalized note to say thank you for doing that. So that is something that I'm going to be doing moving forward. I'm just getting started, and that's going to be, one of my actions
I
after I
love
speak with
it.
my guests.
I love it. Those are beautiful. Are they rifle paper?
Yes, love
Yes.
rifle paper.
Rifle paper.
I've got a rifle paper mug. I've got all the rifle, Jaclyn.
That's amazing. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story, for your work, for your honesty. Just so happy to now know you and to have this story out in the world and
Thank
to see
you.
where Gifted Life goes.
I'm so honored to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity. And I can't wait to continue the conversation with you and as we talk about kindness and giftedness.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay. Bye,
Thank you
Julie.
so much. Bye.
Why Kindness is made possible by the Wasserman-Glasser family in loving memory of kindmaker Sandra K. Wasserman. More information on our guest and topics from this episode are available in the show notes. We hope you enjoyed this conversation and would love to hear what you think. Please leave a review wherever you listen and join us on social media and at kindness.org to learn more about how you can be a kind maker. We will continue exploring this question, why kindness, throughout the season. So stay tuned, friend, and thank you for your kindness.